Hello, my name is Jonas Jendi. I'm the President and CEO of Cogmed, the working memory training company. I'm here in Houston, Texas to visit with Linda Narun of the Tono Center. Linda, please introduce yourself.
I'm Linda Narun. I'm a speech-language pathologist, and I have worked with Dr. Tono first before the Tono Center, and now at the Tono Center for about 30 years we've been together.
What is working memory and why is it important?
Working memory, from my perspective, and I'm a speech-language pathologist and I do a lot of educational work with the children and with adults, is the ability to hold something in your mind long enough to be able to work with it and to make decisions on the basis of that information that you have held. If you can't do that, then a lot of the behavior is impulsive, and the memory part of it itself is that it affects reading comprehension, the ability to retain facts like math facts, and it has an exponential effect on the development of academic skills, because when you fail at the bottom, you start failing at the top.
How do you recognize a child or an adolescent with a poor working memory? What are the characteristics?
I really think that they all look a little different. That if we were to go to what working memory difficulty looks like, we're going to limit the kinds of problems that we deal with. Because sometimes you don't get a difference in, say, an IQ test or on a cognitive battery that makes the memory look very poor. But I think that we have to be very careful with those measures, because nobody knows that those are exact measures of working memory anyway. But we can see it in the kinds of difficulties that the kids display or the adults display. So, for example, there is a young man that I worked with who he's brilliant, and his career is being negatively affected by his inability to remain organized and to think ahead. So he's always in the moment. He was a gentleman that did Cogmed, and he did brilliantly. The
children do the training. What do they tell you about how they feel about doing the training while they do it? How do they describe it?
This varies from child to child and parent to parent. At the Tono Center, we use an integrated approach to treatment. And so I am very careful about who is allowed to do Cogmed. It almost becomes a privilege for which you have to be ready. And so for those children who are not yet ready to be compliant or to make the commitment, they have to wait until they are ready to do that. So the children, most of the children that we have done, we have screened very carefully, and the children are very excited. That's not to say we don't make mistakes. And there have been one or two children that have been resistant. And when I look back on it, we can see the reasons quite clearly for that. But generally, the response is very positive.
And what is the role of the parent in the training?
Right, so that depends. We do the training perhaps a little differently in that not everybody does it at home. There are some children that come into our office if we think that they need greater supervision or a relationship with someone else to finish the training that is not provided by a parent because of the nature of the relationship between the two of them. So if the child is doing it at home, it is important that the parent can remain positive, rewarding, and motivating. And if we don't have all of those things, especially as you get towards the end of the program when the demands are increasing, we find that the effort of the child decreasing. So it's very important as a coach for me to be working as much with the parents or whoever is training as with the child.
How do you make sure that the users really complete the training? What are the resources you apply to make sure they complete the training in a good way?
As I said, we have an integrated approach at the Tono Center. And so I think the children I have been most successful with are those families where we have established a good relationship, and that I can work with the parent to encourage them to be able to do the training. So I'm very sure that they are prepared for the kind of training. Once we've done that, and we've had that initial session with Cogmed where we've gone through it and we've written contracts and promised and rewarded and done all of the things that we are supposed to do, I also speak with the parents on a very regular basis. They have my pager number, they have my email, they have my telephone number, so that if they have any problems, I am available to any one of them at any time. Fortunately, not too many people ever abuse that. And then there is a formal appointment, telephone appointment, every week that I explain very carefully that this is as important as if they were coming into my office.
When parents ask you, how will I fit this into my very tight schedule and the tight schedule of my child? This is half an hour, maybe 45 minutes a day for 5 weeks. What do you tell them?
Well, we have to work out, and I work with them to try and show them how much time they waste, first of all, and that how little a half an hour is in a day. And very often, not only does the child have the attention problems, but there's often a disorganization around them in the family. And so I have to help the family and the child to learn more about time and how to manage that time. And I've had no problems with that, actually. That part's worked out very well. But it's very possible that we've done lots of work before we start Cogmed so that we don't have that difficulty.
As a Cogmed coach, having coached a good number of clients through the training, what would you say about the effects on the family? This is not just about one child. It's the involvement of one child, of course, but it's also the parents, often both parents, siblings are involved in some ways. What would you say about the effects on the family dynamics?
Right. Well, the actual doing of the program is really not that onerous. It's not as if we're asking them to sit for 2 hours and take the time away from all the other children. So if we're working with a family, we can work out how they can fit it into their schedule. The other way that it's really affected families is a much more positive child in the home, so that there are much more positive relationships in the home. Now, I have seen that some people become very anxious doing Cogmed, but in my experience, particularly the last few kits that we've done, there is a great reduction in anxiety because of the feeling of being successful. And I'm thinking of one particular girl right now who has realized how smart she is, that it's not everyone who's just telling her that. And suddenly she's not working so hard, she's not being so obsessive, and her grades are just as good. She never had bad grades. So the effect on the relationship with her mother has been really quite wonderful to watch.
In your experience, what role does the school play? Are you in any contact with teachers in any way? Is there any interaction? And what do they say? What kind of responses do you get from schools?
We work always, not only with the child, the family, but also with the school. It's very important, I think, when we're doing any program, that we integrate everybody into the child's life so that we can get follow-up and generalization of the skill that we're teaching. So we teach the school the vocabulary that we're using, and the reports that I'm getting from the teachers is that there are less behavior problems. One of the things I think we have to be careful of is not making expectations so high that nobody sees any change. So I try to let them all be realistic about the changes that we can expect initially, which sometimes are not as great as people anticipate, but that they really do accumulate over time. And with that background, the teachers have been reporting some very significant changes.
And when parents ask you about the lasting effect, to what extent this actually lasts, what do you tell them? What is your experience and how do you explain that to them?
Well, the first thing we have to tell them is that Cogmed is fairly new. So the way I try to explain it to them is to go back to basic neuroscience, which is the old paradigm, use it or lose it, or use it a lot and make it better. So what we do is encourage the school and the family to continually be challenging this brain to use the new skills. So in theory, it should last, even if we don't have the evidence of it lasting. And over time, when we've been using the principles of neuroscience, that proves to be true. So I have every confidence that we are going to see lasting improvements from Cogmed.